vasudeva sutam devam kamsa chanuramardanam devaki paramanandam krishnam vande jagadgurum. So we are studying the Bhagavad Gita and we are on chapter 3, almost towards the end of the third chapter. Arjuna has asked a question, prompted by what, instigated by what internal force does a person unwillingly, does not want to do anything wrong, still does what is sinful, what is wrong, and we keep doing this. So what is it that makes us, forces us to do what is wrong, does not allow us to do what we know to be right? We all know what is right and wrong, but we cannot follow it. Why? So this is a very fundamental question in spiritual life. Atakena prayuktoyam papam charati purushaha anichannapi varshneya baladiva niyojita. We had seen the question last time. So this is really a practical question. Not only does this force, this power within us not allow us to do what is right, that we know what is right and what is wrong, and yet we are unable to follow the path of dharma and adharma, right and wrong, moral and immoral. Why do we keep making these mistakes? Not only that, spiritual life, that becomes so difficult. Why is it so difficult? The path of bhakti, we are supposed to love God intensely without any desire for anything else, just love, fall in love with God. But why is it so difficult? Why is it so difficult to love God? Why don't we feel that coming automatically? Karma yoga, in the path of karma yoga, we are supposed to perform all our activities unselfishly, without attachment. Why is it so difficult to do anything unselfishly? Why do selfish motives keep coming in? In the path of meditation, we are supposed to focus and meditate and say repeat the mantra or focus on the form of the deity. Why is it so difficult? Why does the mind why is the mind so restless? Why does it keep getting scattered? And in the path of jnana, to know that I am Brahman, I am the witness consciousness, not body and mind. Why is it so difficult to grasp this? Why is it so difficult to get clarity about this and difficult to stay with it? So in all the yogas, you see, there's difficulties there. And the answer Sri Krishna gives, he says, Shri Bhagavan uvacha kāma-esha krodha-esha rajaguna samudbhava mahashano mahapapma vidhyenam iha vairiṇam. He says, the cause of all of this is kama krodha, desire and anger. And desire and anger can be collapsed back into one, that is desire, kama. We discussed last time that it is desire which is, when it is obstructed, it becomes anger. Anytime anybody is angry, anytime we become angry, if we calmly introspect and see where did that anger come from, something which we wanted, explicitly or implicitly we wanted it should be like this, that person should behave like this, or the situation should be like this. It was not like that, and so we react in a flash of anger. The reaction could be different. If there is one person who is obstructing our desire, we become angry on him or her. If there is no person, it's an impersonal thing like coronavirus or something, but we still feel angry and irritated, and somebody who is innocent, but we take out our anger on that person. If it is a very powerful person or some which is obstructing our desire, maybe boss or somebody, you cannot get angry on the boss, but then the result is tension or fear. Same problem. Our desire is obstructed somewhere. We wanted it this way, not working that way. You may ask, what about righteous anger? I want to do good for other people, and somehow people are making it difficult. They are obstructing me from doing what is good. People get angry with children. I am doing it for their own good, and see how they are behaving, especially teenage kids. Sometimes you get upset. Right, so there is no righteous anger. You may be you may want to do something good, and that's all right. You should do it, and one can do that without getting angry. It's natural to get upset, but don't. Even there is some desire which is being obstructed. It is much, if you want to do something good for somebody else without any selfish motive, one can do it without getting angry. This Buddhist monk, Thich Nhat Hanh, who is at the root of this wonderful mindfulness which has become so popular in the Western world, in the whole world now. So it originated in the West from Thich Nhat Hanh, who came from Vietnam. He is very ill now, I heard. There was a Vietnamese monk at Harvard last year. He was telling me that Thich Nhat Hanh has gone back to Vietnam and he is critically ill. But anyway, when many of you must have heard about him, his book, the Art of Mindfulness. What was the name of the book? The Art of Mindfulness, I think. The Mindfulness, the Miracle of Mindfulness. The Miracle of Mindfulness, the classic book. If you have not read it, please read it. So there he, so not in that book, in an earlier writing, he says that when he first came to the West in Europe, he came to France, I think in 1970s. At that time, these Greenpeace activists, they were agitating for nuclear disarmament. So a good objective, noble objective, anti-war, nuclear disarmament. So peace, agitating for peace. Now this monk, he wrote that I was surprised to see that how these peace activists are so angry. So they do not see they're saying that we are angry for a good cause, it's all right, but anger and peace, they don't go together actually. So even for a good cause, one should not become angry. Anger is always a result of obstruction of desire. Some desire is obstructed. So therefore, anger, desire and anger, kāma-krodha, you can reduce it to one, kāma, desire. And it comes out of rajaguna in the mind. It is of the nature of mahāshana, mahāpāpma. Mahāshana means great hunger. This desire, kāma, is never satisfied. The more you put, it's like a fire which blazes forth. The more ghee you put into the fire, the more fuel you put into the fire, the more it blazes forth. So more we try to satisfy desire, more it keeps on increasing. It's not that I will satisfy a few desires. This much money if I have, I'll be happy. And the children, 2 kids, and they're doing well, I'll be happy. And then just this little group of friends, and I'll be happy. And this kind of house and car, I'll be happy. We think like that. It never works like that. It's always little more, little change I want. Then I will be happy. And that then I will be happy never comes in life. It keeps on changing little by little. So our desires keep on increasing. Mahāshana, great, literally it means, ashana means hunger, eater. So it's a great eater. What is a great eater? Desire, kāma. There is no way of getting fulfillment ultimately by trying to satisfy the desires. Mahāpāpma. Mahāpāpma means productive of great sin. So desire forces us through temptation and fear. Desire forces us to do what we know is wrong. So I know what is right, what is wrong, but this kāma, desire, it could be for sense pleasures, it could be for, like particular partiality or, obsession with a person or with maybe for a gadget or anything from video game to anything, money, name and fame, position, political power, whatever it is, it leads to mahāpāpma. That means it makes people do very wrong things. And know it to be nitya-vairiṇā. It is an enemy. Here in this means in spiritual life. Especially when it comes to, the teaching was of karma yoga. Third chapter teaches karma yoga. In the performance of karma yoga, this is the great enemy. Kāma is the great enemy. It makes us do these wrong things. You asked why people do, unwillingly also people do wrong things. It is because of this. They are unable to overcome desire, which comes up in the mind. Why does it come up? Because of past prakriti, our nature, which Krishna has said, people follow their prakriti. This prakriti is the sum total of all our conditioning in this life and also accumulated tendencies which have come, we have transferred from earlier lives. So this prakriti forces us to this manifests itself in desire in our mind, and it is expressed as raga dvesha. In our mind, raga means attraction, dvesha means aversion. Attractions and aversions come up in the mind to things, food, possessions, place, people, activities. Raga dvesha comes up, bubbles up in our mind, and we follow that. We do that rather than what is right. You asked why spiritual life is difficult. It is because of this desire that spiritual life is difficult. It is difficult to love God because karma makes us love or desire things of the world. People in the world. You say, what is wrong in loving people? If you love people equally, a well-wisher of humanity, that's a great thing. But we don't do that. Our karma is very much directed to people related to us, and related to us means related to this body. My family, my husband, wife, father, mother, children. You say, what is wrong in that? But wrong in that means when that love makes us exceed the limits of dharma. The love should be under the control of dharma. Dharma should not be under the control of my personal love for a few people. Sri Ramakrishna says, my nephew, my niece, this is Maya. I see Gopala in everybody, that is Daya, he says. So he plays on the word Maya and Daya. I used to see that in the Ramakrishna Mission school, where I was a brahmachari when I had joined many years ago. So little children study there, little boys, and their parents come to see the kids because the kids stay in the dorm, in the hostel. Now there are these huge play fields and hundreds of children are playing. So 400, 500 kids are playing in different big playgrounds, and the parents have come to see. And each couple, out of those hundreds of kids, like guided missile, they will zoom in on one. How fast and direct. How is that one little boy different from every other little boy? Not really so much different. But for the parents, that is the one, my kid. So there it is, identification. Nothing wrong in it, but when that takes you beyond the limits of dharma, beyond the limits of morals and ethics, and it also disturbs you in spiritual sadhana. So somebody might ask, is it ever possible that you will have the same kind of love for your children and everybody else's children? That is not only possible, but it should happen. As you become mature, as you grow in psychologically and spiritually, you begin to have that same kind of attitude towards everybody. The extreme level of that, the ultimate development of that, you see in the Holy Mother. For her, everybody is her child and really like her child. So she treats everybody equally. And she went to the extent of saying the Muslim dacoit Amjad, who was there near Jairambati, who had great respect for the Holy Mother, and she also had great affection for him. And she said that just as Sharat is my child, my son, Amjad also is my son. Sharat is Swami Sarvapriyananda, who was the disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, the secretary of the Ramakrishna order, and who was in charge of taking care of everything related to the Holy Mother, whom Sri Ramakrishna trusted so much. Once Sri Ramakrishna went and sat down on the lap of Sharat, who was a young man at that time. He was a very well-built person. And Sri Ramakrishna said, I want to see whether he can take my weight. Take my weight means the weight of the future organization which is to come, for which Swami Sarvapriyananda became the first general secretary. At that time it was called secretary. So he was in charge of the entire organization. That is the weight. Now this Swami Sarvapriyananda, who is a Brahmagyani, who is the writer of this beautiful, extraordinary book, Sri Ramakrishna, the Great Master, and this Muslim dacoit Amjad, Holy Mother says, both are my son. And she says, Jamon, just like Sharat is my son, exactly like that, Amjad also is my son. Imagine. So the evenness, that the same love towards everybody, it's possible. And we should all move towards that. nitya-vairiṇam. He says, Sri Krishna says, in this karma yoga, this kama is the enemy. Kama, the desire, is the enemy. Later on it will come. Desire is the enemy. Shankaracharya in his commentary a little later, he says, desire is the enemy for a jnani, for a spiritual seeker. Desire is always the enemy. Why? Because the spiritual seeker knows that this desire will trap me in samsara. It will not allow me to realize that I am Brahman. It will not allow me to have God realization. Whereas he says for a murkha, for a jnani, desire is always the enemy. And for the murkha, for the fool, when the desire is there and he is satisfying that desire, desire is the source of joy. I want something and I am getting something. Happiness. Only when the result is sorrow, he feels, oh, it was why did I pursue that? It is all worthless. I wasted my life chasing these things. Now I have nothing left. At that point, that person feels remorse. But when he was chasing that desire and satisfying that desire, he felt happy. He felt something good. But whereas a jnani, even when the desire is there, he knows that it is not good. Even if the jnani cannot, the spiritual seeker cannot control himself or herself and tries to satisfy that desire, at that time also knows that this is not good. The result will be bad for me. All right. Now, before we go ahead, a couple of questions it seems. Jayant?
Yes, Master. Grishna, you are next.
Yes, thank you. We were talking about righteous anger, but I was wondering about if you could talk about righteous violence, if there is such a thing. It seems to me, clearly in today's issues with protests and violence, there is some debate over whether the violence is either justified or righteous. And it seems to me also that Krishna and the Mahabharata is all about righteous violence. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. My first answer, of course, and the last one also will be, we won't go there. Because it's such an exciting topic, everybody will jump in, everybody has an opinion, for, against, neutral, and that will be the end of the Gita class. I remember at the university last year at Harvard, this Professor Karen King, so she's an expert in the New Testament, in the Bible. So I took that course. I audited it. So I was sitting in the class, and in the first class, somebody asked, Trump is doing this, Trump is doing that. Then she normally responds to all questions. She listened, very humorous lady. She listened very seriously, and then she said, okay, we won't go there. And then she went back to her. And throughout the course, nobody ever asked any political question after that, which is something big thing, because Harvard is a hotbed of political opinion and all that. But before we move on, in the case of the Mahabharata, it was somewhat easier, because what you might call the Kurukshetra war was what might be called a just war or a good war, the way it has been, way we understand it. The evil people are very clear, Kaurava, these are evil, Pandavas are on the side of good. Not only that, the duties of castes, these things were clear cut. I don't know in real life whether they were so clear cut or not, but at least on paper in the story they are very clear cut. Arjuna and Krishna, they are all Kshatriyas and they are supposed to do this. So therefore it can be taken, the issue whether it's violence or not is never really dealt with. Arjuna asks this question, that should I at all fight, because I'm going to kill my own relatives and this is terrible. But the way we modern people ask this question, that is not raised in the Gita. I remember having this discussion again in the Bhagavad Gita class at the Harvard Divinity School also, where I pointed this out, that again and again in the modern discussions on Gita, this question is raised, that how is it that Krishna, who is God, encouraged Arjuna to fight a war? Didn't Krishna encourage violence? So, what do you say to that? The answer is that is not at all an issue. The Bhagavad Gita, contrary to what it may appear, is not about war. It's not about violence. It's not even about just war. It's not at all about that. It's a moksha shastra. It's a text which deals with liberation, enlightenment, God realization, the ultimate goal of human life, moksha. If you ask, you are saying that, how do you back that up? Because it's clearly about war, and Arjuna is asking very pertinent questions about whether he should fight the war or not. Notice, none of the traditional commentators, starting from Shankaracharya, has ever raised this question which you are raising. Is this a just war? What is a just war? Should we fight this war or not? Was Krishna right in encouraging Arjuna to fight the war when Arjuna wanted to drop out of the war, not to fight the war? This was not regarded as a relevant question at all. So many hundreds of little questions are raised and discussed and answered in different ways. This was not regarded as a relevant question. Why this is, what has happened is, I mentioned in an article a few years ago, it is the Western mindset with the tremendous guilt of these world wars in the 20th century. There is this consciousness about not fighting wars. War is the evil of warfare. This is something also pretty new actually. In the 19th and 20th centuries this has come up. So now it colors every kind of thinking in the West. This is not something that they thought was relevant for nearly 1,000 years of writing commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita. Another reason is the texts were meant to fulfill different objectives. There were texts called the Dharma Shastras, so like the Manusmriti, which deal with what is the duty, what is right, what is wrong, what is moral, what is immoral, what is dharma and what is adharma. Whereas Gita and Upanishads, they deal with moksha, God realization, ultimate fulfillment, purpose of human life. So, particular right and wrong of this issue is not an issue that really bothered the commentators. Neither Shankaracharya talks about it, nor Ramanuja, nor Madhva, nor Madhusudan Saraswati. None of the whole series of commentators on the Bhagavad Gita ever even raised this question.
But does that mean that we don't even use the lessons of the Gita to address it for ourselves?
You can. Now there's a question. If you want to develop a theory of just war, there were people from the Kennedy School of Government who were there in the class. They asked this question. I said, your quest is not unjustified. It's a modern inquiry and it's a good inquiry, and you can investigate the Gita with that attitude also. But remember, that's not what the text itself is for. For example, there are people who take management lessons from the Bhagavad Gita, Gita as a manual for leadership. On the face of it, it's wrong, because that's not the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita. But do you mean that there is no insight to be gained on leadership from the Bhagavad Gita? Of course not, there is. You actually find a lot from the Bhagavad Gita which will be helpful for modern management issues, and the people have written wonderful articles and books on it. So, but one must always be very clear. These texts were very systematic. So they outlined at the very beginning, they will say what is the Vishaya, subject matter. The subject matter of Bhagavad Gita is Moksha Shastra. It is not a book on ethics, right and wrong. Right and wrong was discussed in Dharma Shastra. Of course, right and wrong will come up because right and wrong is connected with spirituality. So in that context, ethics will come up. But not ethics of war or social justice, for example, another big issue. Is it about caste? Is it against caste? These issues came up. You can discuss it, but remember, Gita is not about that also. This must be very clear. Otherwise, I found these people had come and they wanted answers to these things, and they were not getting it. Again and again the discussion was, oh, these commentators, we are reading Madhusudan Saraswati's very voluminous commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. And the feeling is, oh, the questions we are interested in, the commentators don't raise those questions. What about gay rights? What does Madhusudan Saraswati and Shankaracharya have to say about that? Nothing. How strange. What about the justification of war? Disarmament? Why doesn't it? These are your issues. They are not the issues of the Bhagavad Gita. But yes, if you want, you can read the text in that way, keeping in mind that this was not what the text was about. You can draw your own conclusions and build up your own theories about it. I'm not saying it's unjustified. I'm just saying that if you don't keep this point I made, that it is a moksha shastra, if you do not keep it in mind, you will be puzzled. This is not a question, as the scholars were puzzled. Why aren't the commentators interested in the questions we are interested in? And why are the commentators going off on obscure philosophical points which we are not really interested in? Because the central purpose of the text is what the commentators understood it to be, moksha. And therefore, what they are saying is very much in line with that. They are right. You are wrong. You are coming here with the wrong question in mind. But if you know this, after this also, you can ask that question, and definitely you will find a lot of material in the Bhagavad Gita. What else did I want to say about this? Yes. So, for example, interesting point. In Professor Amartya Sen's class, so he gave a class on ethics. So, I attended some of the classes there. So, once he quotes quite often from the Hindu Shastras. So, he said, in the Bhagavad Gita, he's an atheist, a declared atheist. So, he said, in the Bhagavad Gita, I tend to agree with Arjuna. In the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna said that if you fight this war, it will lead to destruction and suffering and sorrow, and so we should not fight this war. And at the end of the Mahabharata, Professor Sen said, if you go to the end of the Mahabharata and you see these women wailing for their men folk who have died, there's a whole description of that, the women folk wailing for the dead. And everything that Arjuna predicted, that the destruction of the family and the downfall and all those things happened. They really actually happened after the war. So, Amartya Sen said, I agree with Arjuna, he was right. He shouldn't have, he didn't say that he shouldn't have fought the war, he just said, it seems Arjuna was vindicated. I didn't give him all this thing about moksha shastra or not, because I don't think he would have been impressed. So, yeah, that's what I wanted to say. If it was about war between Pandavas and Kauravas, if that was the central issue, one is that in the Gita text itself, you see how fast the context of war disappears. First chapter, it is all about the war and Arjuna saying why he will not fight it. Second chapter onwards, when Krishna starts speaking, the war fades to the background. It is about karma yoga, about meditation, about the nature of the self, about the nature of God and the ultimate purpose of human life, even about the constitution of the human psyche, sattva, rajas, tamas, all of that, which seem to have nothing to do with these masses of men supposedly arrayed around with weapons, ready to murder each other. No connection. Entire Gita. The other point I wanted to make also was, look at somebody like Mahatma Gandhi, for example. Oh, Professor Sen even said that. He said, how could an apostle, I don't understand, how could an apostle of non-violence, supposedly an apostle of non-violence, derive his inspiration from the Gita, which is about violence? The straight answer is the Gita is not about violence. If it was about a war between the Kauravas and Pandavas, a civil war between some ancient, half mythical maybe, we don't even know the exact historical status of that. Of what interest would it be to modern Hindus in 20th century and 21st century? Of what interest would it have been to Vinoba Bhave or Radha Krishnan or Aurobindo or Mahatma Gandhi? Some obscure past civil war, who was right, who was wrong, who cares? It is actually a manual for spiritual life. That's why it's of perennial interest to Hindus. Yeah, so. Thank you. Any other question?
Poonamji, you're next.
Yes.
Yeah, so Swamiji, our deepest desires are in the subconscious mind and we really don't have any access to them. So what should we do when these vasanas, they come up as vrittis?
Yes. So, Krishna will talk about it You're right. The desires are coming up from our prakriti, our nature, which is in a sort of stored form, and we do not have access. We cannot go there and change our vasanas directly. We have no access to them. We have become aware of them only when the desires bubble up in our minds. When we are attracted to something and repulsed from something else, then we know, oh, this is my prakriti, this is my nature. We usually don't reflect like that. We should. It's a very good way of getting to know my own prakriti. So what do we do? Krishna will tell us in the next few verses the method. He's first telling us the problem, then the method of overcoming kama, of desire. Method of overcoming that. The importance of overcoming it, he has outlined here, he has highlighted here, because without that, our ethical life in the world is not possible, let alone spiritual life. None of that will be possible. It will become a terrible battle if we don't tackle this central problem of desire. Notice the Buddha made it the central issue. First noble truth, all is suffering, dukkham. Second noble truth, the source of this suffering is desire. So Trishna, he called it thirst. And then of course how to come out of it, and Ashtanga Marga and all. So Krishna will tell us about it. Short answer, when it comes up as a vritti in the mind, then we become aware of it. And if normally we don't consider it, we rush to either fight against it, control ourselves, fail, or we simply rush to satisfy those desires. The sadhaka or sadhika will become aware, is alert, that this vritti which has come in my mind, if I follow it up, if I nourish it in my mind, mental level, if I express it in speech, and if I follow it in action, mind, speech, action, will it take me towards God realization or take me away from God realization? Because some vasanas are good, many are not. And once you are aware of that, then you have to replace the ones which are unskillful, which are not according to spirit, your sadhana, which are against your sadhana, with positive ones. How to do that and what is the method? Everything Krishna is going to talk about.
Maharaj, there is a question in the chat from Sangeeta Anyan. Swami Ranganathananda ji in his book, Universal Message of the Gita, he writes, no emotion, including anger, is bad by itself, and anger has a place in human life. You see some injustice going around you, it must rouse your indignation, under control. Unless you have anger, you cannot react properly to it. So anger can be channelized into socially useful purposes. Can you please reconcile what you said on this point with your point of view?
True. But the answer is right there in what Ranganathanji has said. It must rouse your indignation under control. What is anger under control? It's not anger. It is just motivation. Then and then again he says anger can be channelized into socially useful purposes. Certainly. So there must be a feeling of what is right and wrong, what is just and unjust. Otherwise what happens is one sinks into tamas, and that is not good. So motivation to do what is right, that definitely should be there. So when I said that don't get angry, does not mean that you will sit like a fool, be tamasic, or that is a very selfish person can say that I don't get upset when there is an injustice out there on the streets. But you will see that same person will get very upset when the slightest problem that person has to face in that person's personal life. That means it's just selfishness. It's not control of anger. I will not get angry for the sake of other people. I will get angry only for my own sake. That is very bad. Swami Vivekananda also says, it is the fool who cannot get angry. The wise person does not get angry. It is the fool who cannot get angry. No anger at all is there. Fool in the tamasic sense. There is no fire in that person at all. And the wise person does not get angry. What that means? What does that mean? It channels the anger into, as Ranganathanji says, into socially useful direction, into good direction. Swami Vivekananda's his own enormous feeling for the sufferings of the poor and the oppressed, of women. So there was sorrow there. There was real anger and sorrow for what was going on, and therefore it was channeled into this huge movement which he started. All right. In social causes also, there is a useful anger, in most cases a useless anger. The useless anger is often that, see, I am fighting for social causes, I am fighting for the oppressed, I am fighting for those who are discriminated against, and my whole purpose is to show you are not fighting, so you are bad. This is miserable. It has no higher purpose. There is no real sympathy for anybody. There is a term for it, virtue signaling. Virtue signaling. So I am signaling that I am more virtuous than you by showing my anger. Have you ever lifted a single finger to do anything, sacrificed anything for those people? Probably not. So that kind of anger is not beneficial. All right. Now number 38. Let's go to verse number 38. Sri Krishna develops this topic. Dhūmenāvriyate vahnir yathādarśho malena yatholbenāvṛito garbhas tathā tenedam āvṛitam. Just as fire is obscured by smoke, a mirror is obscured by dirt, and the embryo by the womb, so is knowledge by craving. So Sri Krishna gives here 3 examples of how kāma. See, now already Krishna has collapsed anger and desire into desire only. First he said kāma esha krodha esha, kāma and krodha. Now in the 38th verse he is saying kāma, desire. So how desire obstructs knowledge, how desire sabotages our spiritual life, he gives 3 examples. One example is fire, which is bright but obscured by smoke. So the brightness of the fire is obscured by smoke. Just like that, desire obscures the knowledge, which is like fire. Another example, the dirt on the mirror. The mirror is shiny and it reflects, but it is covered by dirt and it cannot form its function of reflection. Just as the fire which illumines by its very nature cannot illumine if there is a lot of smoke. Similarly, the mirror which reflects your face by its very constitution cannot do that if there is a layer of dirt over it. Similarly, knowledge or Vedantic knowledge, it will not function if it is obscured by kāma, by desire. Then the third example is the fetus, the child in the womb of the mother. The fetus is covered by the membrane of the womb. Ulba is like a skin, the membrane which covers. So the child which can move around, the natural movement of the child, until the child is born, it cannot do so many things because for its own protection and growth, it is restricted within the womb of the mother. So the functioning of the fire is restricted by smoke, obscured by smoke. The functioning of the mirror is obscured by dirt, and the free movement of the child or the fetus is obscured by the membrane of the womb. In the same way, knowledge, the functioning of knowledge, which ought to liberate us, which ought to give us freedom from suffering and ought to give us joy, dukkha nivritti, ananda prapti, does not work at all when it is obstructed by desire. Another implication of this is, notice the gradation of the examples. Fire and smoke, just a gust of wind can remove the smoke. It's very easy to remove the smoke, but little more difficult to remove the dirt on the mirror. You have to scrub. And when it's the question of the membrane of the womb, there is nothing you can do. You have to only wait for the child to be born. Only in time it will come to fruition. Same way, the desire, the obscuration of desire is different in different sadhakas. In some it is very light and it can be removed by vichara. You understand that is not good for my spiritual life, I want God realization, and move ahead and leave those desires behind. It could be as easy as that. An effort of the will guided by viveka, by our understanding. In some, not so easy. You have to scrub. So, chitta shuddhi is necessary. Like the mirror has to be scrubbed. Then only it will become shiny and can reflect. The dirt will be removed. So, little more effort is necessary. And in some, the layer of kama is so thick that one has to go on doing sadhana and wait for the time to come. Just like the child has to be born to come out of the womb. So, this is the 38th verse. Then 39th verse. āvṛitam jñānam etena jñānino nitya-vairiṇā kāma-rūpeṇa kaunteya duṣhpūreṇānalena ca. O son of Kunti, knowledge, jñānam, is covered, obscured by this enemy, nitya-vairi, the persistent enemy. This is who is the eternal enemy of the jnani. Nitya-vairi. Vairi means enemy, nitya means constant enemy. What is this enemy? Kāma-rūpa, of the form of desire. And what is the nature of this kama? duṣhpūreṇānalena. Duṣhpūreṇā. Pura means to fulfill. It's very difficult to fulfill. That means it's impossible to satisfy it. The way we normally try to deal with desire, that by pursuing it and trying to fulfill these desires, will not work. What happens is, most people, they chase these desires in life. Very few people get the opportunity of satisfying their main desires in life. Those who do get the opportunity, if we do not satisfy, frustration. Those who do get the opportunity of satisfying those desires, they find dissatisfaction. No tripti, no permanent satisfaction is there. Not only that, worse, it creates habit. It habituates you. You want more and more of that. By satisfying kama, nobody goes beyond kama. This is a lesson that it takes a long time for us to learn. So, duṣhpūreṇā. Anala, analena ca. Anala means fire. Shankaracharya in his commentary gives an interesting etymology. Analam means, he says, na asya alam paryapti. Alam in Sanskrit means enough, completion, fulfillment. Anala means that which has, there is no enough to it, there is no end to it, there is no fulfillment to it. So, anala basically means fire, but you can derive it in this way also. So, it means that desire is something for which there is no full stop. There is always little more. I am looking forward to little more. I remember this very touching story of a Buddhist monk, an Englishman who became a Buddhist monk, and he wrote that he was in Sri Lanka or Bhutan or somewhere, and his mother was ill, so he went back to, actually mother died, he went back to attend his mother's funeral. So he was telling this story in that article that when I was a kid, my mother raised me alone, and we were very poor, and we lived in this little English village, and every day when I would, there was a time when I would go past a shop, there was this nice toy car, and I wanted that toy car. So I went home and told my mother about it, and she said, look, we can't afford it. And I kept on, like children do, that I will never ask you for anything more in my whole life, only that one car if you can purchase for me, that is it. That, like children, little kids do. And one day he said, I was coming back from school and I looked at the shop window. Every day I would stop in front of the shop window and admire that toy car. I saw the toy car was not there. So I thought maybe some rich kid has purchased. So I sadly went home and I found the car was sitting on the table. It was my birthday and my mother had purchased it for me. And so I was delighted and I started playing with it. And as time goes, after 1 or 2 weeks, I was played little less. After 1 month, it was forgotten. I think one wheel came off the car, but my mother never let me forget it. Whenever I asked for anything after that, my mother would say, I will never ask for anything more in my life. And so she kept that toy car on top of the almirah or something. And this young man, he says, who became a Buddhist monk, he said, this was my first and deepest lesson on the nature of desire. What that little child's desire, the same desire continues throughout our lives. We always have that feeling, I will never want anything more. Let me just get these things. As we grow up, it's no longer toy car. It may be relationship, it may be an education, maybe a job, it may be a house, it may be this kind of achievement in my life. And if we do not attain it, frustration. If we do attain it, we find it's no longer as satisfying as I hoped it would be. Robert Wright, who has written this book, Why Buddhism is True, he is a Darwinian, neo-Darwinian. So he says, there is a reason why satisfaction of desires is unsatisfying. He gives a Darwinian reason. He says, nature designs it in such a way. What does he mean? For example, eating sugar. He gives an example of eating sugar, but it could be any kind of sense pleasure. Now, the way nature sets it up is that it promises much more pleasure than there actually is. So, it attracts us. It feels that I will really be happy if I eat that food, if I have this relationship, if I go to that place and see this sight. The promise is very high. And what nature does, today's advertisers have learned their lesson from nature, and they give 10 times more promise of happiness. If you buy this gadget, anybody who has bought that phone, you see all are smiling. They are all young and good looking and smiling and happy, as if like that little child. In the life, nothing more is required after iPhone 7. That is it. Life is fulfilled. That kind of expression they will have. Nature promises this. And today advertisers also do. Swami Sarvapriyananda ji, who was in Houston, he was giving a talk in San Diego once, and he was talking about this cereal, new cereal is there, an advertisement, and the children are eating it, and they are all saying, "Wow, fantastic, awesome, this is amazing." And Sarvapriyananda ji said, no food in the world can be that awesome, or nobody ever really does that. Even though the most delicious food prepared by the greatest chef in the world, if it is that also there, you don't start jumping and saying, awesome, wonderful. No, it is not true. That does not happen. So Robert Wright says, why it does not happen? Why does it seem that it will make me so happy, and when we enjoy it, it's not so much? He says, that is nature's, that is the logic of evolution. Nature will promise a lot of happiness so that you do it. You go and eat that fruit, fulfill that activity, for example, reproduction, and nature will give you some happiness, but not that extreme total fulfillment which we had hoped, the animal had hoped, animal had felt it would get. Because if it gave that total and that awesome, wonderful happiness, then you would not want to repeat it. If you are so satisfied, why would you want to repeat it anymore? You give just enough so that it entices you, so you want to repeat it or try something like that again next time. And that's what nature wants you to do. If a food tasted was so satisfying, you get totally fulfilled and your tummy is full, why will you eat it next time anymore? It's done. You have got your satisfaction. No. Little less than what was promised, and very vanishing also. After some time it goes away. So that is nature's way of making us function. He says, duṣhpūreṇā. And then another thing which I had already mentioned about the jnāni and the ordinary person. Shankaracharya's tenedam jñānino nitya-vairiṇā natu murkhasya. This desire is the constant enemy of the jnāni, not for the fool. Why not? Sahi kāmam trishna kāle mitram iva pashyan tat karye dukkhe prapte janati trishnaya aham dukkhitvam apadita iti. The fool thinks of desire as his friend. So when he is enjoying that desire, feels happy. Tat karye dukkhe prapte. Even Shankaracharya has no doubt that the result will always be unhappiness. So the end of the culmination of that, it will either be dissatisfaction or moving on to the next desire, or something will happen which is, the whole thing will be gone. Then what happens? Then that person feels trishnaya aham dukkhitvam apadita. It's by this thirst for desire, fulfilling desires, I have been brought to this sorry state. Then that fool feels that, oh, desire is the cause of my suffering. But for the jnani, natu purvam eva. Earlier, natu purvam eva. The fool does not feel at the beginning that desire is bad. Jnanina eva nitya-vairiṇā. So, but the spiritual seeker knows that even when the desire comes, knows that this is a foe. It will not take me Godward. Even if self-control does not work and that person goes and eats that cookie or that sweet. Somebody gave a nice example of a person with diabetes. The person who does not know that he or she has diabetes and is attracted to eating sweets and happily eats sweets and is enjoying. The result will be bad, and then the person will suffer. But the person who knows that I have diabetes and is attracted towards eating the sweets, and then even while eating the sweets will feel that I am going to suffer and this is bad for me, will also be suffering along with eating the sweets. And so then why not stop eating the sweets? That's the problem, because kāma is there. If you control, if the jnani controls and stops eating because the desire is there, that also causes unhappiness. I want it, but because of diabetes I cannot get it. So both ways unhappiness. Desire for sweets is there, stopped because I am knowledgeable, I know diabetes, I should not eat sweets. If I give in to the desire, failure of willpower, then also suffering. If I control my desire, then also suffering because my desire is not fulfilled. So for jnani, both ways suffering is there. So that's why Vedanta is getting you deeper into trouble. You see, on the other side, when you are enlightened and you have overcome desire, then you are free of it. That is wonderful. On this side, before getting into spiritual life, one feels that satisfaction of these desires is good and enjoys it till one gets to suffering. So kicks and blows come later. But when one is a spiritual seeker, both ways you are trapped. Internally desire is there, but you know the problem with that desire and you are trying to control it, succeeding also little unhappiness, failure also more unhappiness. So this is the problem. Before we go to the next verse, quickly, let me see. Yes, some questions?
Pravi Babu, you're next.
My question was, I've been thinking about this, right? This karma, this chapter about karma, it feels like it is really a personal responsibility. I mean, there is no God mentioned in the whole chapter.
No. Let me stop you right there. God is mentioned. It is karma yoga, mai sarvani karmani sanyasya, offering all your activities to me. The whole teaching of karma yoga is to convert your activities into a worship of God. Krishna puts himself forward as the incarnation who is to be worshipped. Yes.
But I have created this world. In fact, my world is different from somebody else's world. And so it's like what Gaudapada says, that it's a dream. I have created this world, and even my birth, I'm responsible for it. So, and ultimately, it's all my responsibility to clean it up also. That's why all this Upasana and all this stuff that I'm doing is I have to clean up myself, the things that I have done. So ultimately, it boils down to personal responsibility that am I correct saying that? I mean, I'm just thinking.
If you are saying that it's an importance of self-effort, Purushakara is there, yes, certainly. The law of karma is actually a law of self-effort. It is not fatalism. Many people think that Indians are fatalistic. It's not fatalism. It's basically...
That's exactly it.
Yes, Swami Vivekananda said, what we are today is what we have made of ourselves, and what we do now will determine what we will be in the future. So it is actually a law of self-effort, definitely. God is there, and God is the greatest help in spiritual life, is the goal of spiritual life, and is the greatest help in spiritual life. Let us quickly deal with the other questions.
Rekhaji, you're next.
Swamiji, earlier we were discussing on, the ethics of war and what's happening right now. So in a way, doesn't Shri Krishna really deal with it in the second chapter itself? When he says that you're neither the slave nor the slave. So, I mean, he takes it out of the way, in a sense, this whole body-mind attachment. So if that doesn't exist, then naturally the question of good, evil, etc., right, wrong doesn't come up.
No, I wouldn't say that. There he gives you the teaching of the Atma, the doctrine of the soul, that you are not the body, not the mind, you are the immortal self, consciousness, existence, consciousness, bliss. So that's the teaching of Atma, who we really are. That does not immediately solve the problem of right and wrong. And as I said, in the Hindu scriptures, there are very clear distinctions between Dharma Shastra and Moksha Shastra. There is Artha Shastra, there is even a Kama Shastra, there is Artha Shastra, there is Dharma Shastra, there is Moksha Shastra. The four aims of human life, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, they all have different divisions. So what you are asking, and what Girish was asking earlier about just war, is this war right or not? And you relate it to current situation, things like that. The answer would be this is not a text about that. Such issues would be discussed in the Dharma Shastras. Texts dealing with morals, with ethics, with duty in society. Here it only comes in a secondary sense, that Arjuna's duty is such and such. Now the whole issue is how to convert your duty and your place in life into spirituality. This is the issue in Bhagavad Gita. Whether Arjuna should fight this war or not, from a moral perspective, that issue has already been taken care of in Dharma Shastras. A little bit it is touched upon in first chapter, second chapter. But following Professor Karen King, we will not go there. It is an exciting and interesting topic, and one can go on discussing this. Yes.
Punita, you're next.
Ram Swamiji. Sorry, I'm probably going to belabor the same point which you are trying to avoid, but I really connected with chapter 1 in the Gita in a very profound way, so to speak, because I thought the word Vishad and yoga together was really the opening for me in understanding the Gita, in a more, what I would say, in a deeper way, in a personal way, because I came to the Gita in a stressful personal situation, battlefield of sorts in my personal life, but I thought the Gita was trying to diffuse the point of battlefield and stressful situation into a yoga. And when I compared my situation to what Arjuna was facing, I thought it was nothing compared to what he was dealing with. So when I look at these comments about social injustice and people getting angry and resorting to, whatever they are resorting to, I just feel that the key message in the Gita's first chapter especially, at least in my context, was that figure out a way to convert that Vishad, which may be real Vishad, which may be very justified Vishad, but it could be made into a yoga. And if you do, then chapter 2 starts to make so much more sense and starts to put you onto a level which takes you away from the battlefield, sort of what you are alluding to the moksha level, and then your battle starts to become really meaningful, a pursuit, if you will, and starts to kind of make you deal with it in a more coherent and more, I would say, balanced manner. Not that it's very easy, you still kind of degrade yourself into the human emotions and get angry, and I don't know how.
I think I understand what you're getting at. Yes, it is true. We come to spiritual life, often genuine spirituality comes out of sorrow, struggle, loss, when we are confronted with the harsh realities of life, old age, disease, death. This is what turned Siddhartha into the Buddha. It was not just an intellectual inquiry for Siddhartha which made him into the Buddha. It's confronting these harsh realities. And when Arjuna confronted it, and he had these deep questions about the purpose of all of this. Then Krishna introduces spirituality. Till that time, Arjuna was all about dharma, artha, kama. But Krishna introduces a higher purpose of life, the highest purpose of life, God realization, enlightenment, moksha. So yes, the beginning is Vishada. It's very interesting. Vishada yoga, the yoga of depression. Vishada means depression. So depression yoga first, it can, and often in many cases it does bring us to spirituality. When you confront the meaninglessness of life, there is no depth in what we are doing. After some time, we should feel. In his introduction to Hinduism, Houston Smith, he writes that after some time, when you have satisfied dharma, artha, kama, pleasures, even after you have listened, he says, to Mozart and Beethoven, tasted the recipes of the greatest chefs, which all you can do in New York, not right now, but after the lockdown, you can do in New York. And after you have earned money and success in your life, and after, dharma, artha, kama, and after you fight for your favorite political, social causes, after all of that, you're still left with the question, is that all? That's all of life? That's it? Finished? Isn't there anything deeper than this? Higher than this? Permanent? Not all this is transitory. So then the spiritual quest starts. So after Vishada Yoga, then comes the teaching about the self, the real nature of the self. Who am I? What is the ultimate purpose of life? And does God exist? What is the meaning of life? These ultimate questions. Then only we are a spiritual seeker. Yeah. Who is next?
Rick, you're next.
Myself.
Yeah.
Verse 38, the third example of the embryo being covered by the amnion has a positive connotation, because the womb is nourishing and supportive and protective and all that. So I wonder if this is implying that some desires are good, even though all desires may have the potential of overshadowing the self. Some desires are obviously conducive to liberation and others to greater bondage. For instance, desire to go gambling in casinos is going to ruin you financially and lead to addiction, but desire to go to Harvard Divinity School is going to be conducive to greater wisdom or knowledge.
Yes, desires which lead you Godward are definitely, they are to be cultivated. They will not come under karma. Sri Ramakrishna himself said the desire for God is not to be counted under desire. And he gave the example of sweets and sugar candy. If you eat a lot of sweets, you're going to get acid reflux. But that rock candy, that's prescribed as an antacid actually. So though they both taste sweet, but one is to be classified as sweet and one not. The desire for God destroys all other desires, worldly desires. That is true. But even among what you're saying, even among worldly desires, among desires in the world, there are some which are beneficial, some which are not. That's why the whole idea was that desire is to be regulated by dharma. Kama is never by itself. In the scheme of goals of human life, the purusharthas, kama is never by itself. It's always dharmartha kama. On the basis of morals and ethics, an ethical and moral lifestyle, then we pursue our goals in life about desire, kama, about wealth and success and power within the limits of dharma. And in that there is a scale. Philosophy and art and the quest for knowledge, are they helpful in spiritual life? They are. Swami Ashokanandaji, who was a Swami in San Francisco in 1950s and 60s, he wrote in a book for young people who wanted to become monks. He said, before becoming a monk, become a gentleman. Which means, and then he explained, become a person of culture. Something, you must have interest in philosophy, history, music, art, or some kind of higher, or science, higher human culture, and that is a good basis for spirituality. Yes, I'm also reminded of Aurobindo. He says, in the widest possible sense, life itself is yoga. Even when one is not consciously saying that I'm a yogi, I'm searching for God or enlightenment, I'm just living my life to the best of my understanding. That itself is yoga in the long run, because that will take you in a slower way, but it will definitely take you Godward slowly. Do it consciously, you are a spiritual seeker, you are a yogi. Do it unconsciously. You say, I'm not a yogi, I'm just living my life. You're still a yogi, you just don't know it. And you'll take a much longer time to arrive at this, but yes. So that example of the fetus protected by the womb, which allows it to develop. In the same way, we are all developing. Even the person who is chasing money and success and pleasure and that's it, I don't want anything else from life, will slowly go beyond that. Will experience things, will experience life, and life will teach him. Only thing is, that's a long and painful path, and the sooner we come to this self-awareness that I am on a path, on a journey, and how can I do this more wisely than I have been doing it? That's better for us. Yeah. This teaching about desire being the constant enemy of the wise. There's another saying that for the philosopher, everything is sorrow. So one sees through the apparent promises of pleasure and satisfaction in what nature promises us, and then one constantly looks for how to go beyond that, how to investigate and go deeper. All right, now this is the problem, and then Sri Krishna is going to give us the solution in verses 40, 41, 42 and 43. Let's, no, we have already gone beyond time. So let's just stop here. Is there anybody else who has got a question?
Naresh, 2 more questions.
Yes.
Geeta ji, you want to go next?
Yes, Pranam Swamiji.
Namaskar.
Swamiji, the struggle you described, the seeker goes through, could that be a Kurukshetra?
Yes, you can take the Kurukshetra symbolically. It's not actually a physical battlefield, but it's the battlefield of our life.
Is the way?
Yeah, it's the battlefield of our life. When Krishna says to Arjuna, "Mam anusmara yudhyacha," contemplate me, think about me, and fight the battle of life. Yudhyacha, fight the battle. Every one of us is fighting a battle of life, starting from our personal, physical, and mental health, to family around us, to our job, community, career, spiritual life. All of this is your battlefield of life. And so you cannot run away from this battlefield. You have to engage in. This has been given to you for your spiritual growth. And it's good that we have it. So let's engage in it. But Krishna says, "Ma manusmara," keep your mind on me, keep your mind on God. Whether you do it as a jnani, Krishna will explain later in this chapter, in the last few verses, how a jnani tackles kama, the problem of desire. Who else is having a question?
Next is iPad.
Who is iPad?
Swami means Pranam Swamiji. Swamiji, in the Gita, at later parts they say that you should do your karma, your duty based on your nature, on your prakriti. So the question, and it even says that it's better to do what is your nature imperfectly than to do something else perfectly.
Yes, we have already read that part. We just read it. Yeah.
If I am able to do something perfectly, wouldn't that automatically be in my nature?
Not necessarily. Perfectly in the sense that what Arjuna was implying, that it's a much better thing to go away to the mountains. He says in one of the verses, better to live by begging for one's food like a begging monk than to fight in this terrible battle and kill one's relatives just for a kingdom. Now, that might be morally, that might be a better consequence, like you don't have to engage in violence, but that's not the duty which Arjuna is cut out for. when you say I do it perfectly, yet you are not called to do it. And in your life, you are called to do something. So maybe the kid has assignments for school and is not able to do those perfectly. And maybe the kid can play his favorite video game perfectly. Now, what is the swadharma of the kid? Is it to struggle with those assignments and do them as well as he can imperfectly, or do wonderful in like play a wonderful games, video games for hours and hours together? Now the thing is, while struggling with those assignments and imperfectly doing them also, the result is that there is growth. Whereas very easily doing something else, which comes so easily to me, video game is a bad example, but anything else that comes easily to me, I am not really growing there. It was not taking me, it's not making me grow spiritually, not taking me Godward. Yeah.
But very small question, Swami, just to say, if you have to choose later, you have to choose a job or a career, say, your family tells you to do something.
Yes.
And you love to do something else.
Yes.
What should you actually do?
What you love to do? I always say three things. As far as your career is concerned, a very sort of rule of thumb. Does it is it something that you are good at? One. Is it something that you like? And does it take care of your needs? Your needs, not your greed. So does it fulfill your needs? That's one. Does it? Are you good at it? Are you doing a good job of it? And also, do you like it? And you see, they are mutually exclusive. They are. You can say yes to one and you can say no to the other also. So if all three you say yes, then you should go ahead and do that.
Last question.
Yes.
So much for next.
Pranam Swamiji.
Namaskar.
Question was, like, as you mentioned, like whether somebody at any point of time can develop the desire for God realization, that is good. My question is, whether or not somebody develops the desire, is it a result of their past karma? And in a sense, I don't want to ask it with a negative connotation, but whether a desire for God realization arises in someone's mind, is it under their control, or is it the result of what they have done and the nature that they have acquired over a period of time?
In general, desire is not under our control. Even for worldly things also, it comes up from our past conditioning. And for God realization, that also comes up from as a result of our spiritual evolution. But in general, it has come for all of us, and it's a precious thing. So one must cultivate that and nourish that. Once the flame is there, one must protect it, and it's a very valuable. I would say it's the most valuable thing in our lives. Ultimately, you'll see that's the only thing that matters. Our own spiritual journey and progress. At the end of our lives, you'll see that's the thing which you cherish above everything else in life. Yeah.
And that's entirely true. My question in that regard also, which comes up in the same Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says once you attain a certain level of spiritual maturity, it persists and you start from that level.
Yes.
So is it possible to extinguish that flame at all? Or
No.
The flame has been lit, it's going to just keep on.
Krishna says very clearly, there is no loss on this path. He says, see, this is a great difference between this and the worldly path, between moksha and dharmartha kama. In the other things, whatever you have started, the money you have accumulated, it will not be carried over to your next life. The family and relatives that you have, it will not be carried over to your next life. Nothing. Only some samskaras will travel with you, and the spiritual work that we have done, our sadhana that we have done, the accumulated result of that will always be there. It's imperishable. That's where we start off from the next life. And its power is unmistakable. That's what will. Swami Vivekananda says, keep thinking good thoughts. They do not die. They are always there. They come to your help with the power of 10,000 angels. He uses those words. As we accumulate good samskaras, they are always there, and they will take us Godward. Krishna will say to Arjuna in the 6th chapter, helplessly you will be brought into spiritual life. He says, whether you want it or not, a spiritual desire will awaken in you in your next life, if a person has not enlightened. But Advaita Vedanta says, why wait for next life? Let us be enlightened in this life. So with that spirit, Let us bring the class to a close.
Thank you.
Thank you. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu. Please stay safe. Take care, everybody. Let me see this. Yes. Good to see you. Good to see your faces. Good to see everybody. Yes. Yes. Take care. Jai Ramakrishna. Jai Ramakrishna.